I was 29, a data analyst at Verilitech, a mid-sized startup that called itself revolutionary, though they treated their actual innovators like disposable background noise. Before we continue, if you've ever felt invisible at work, like your ideas were only good enough for someone else to steal, then hit that subscribe button. Because this is the story of how I turned betrayal into an empire and made the people who underestimated me beg for a second chance. Let's continue. For 3 years, I poured my soul into that place. Late nights, spreadsheets that bled into weekends, dashboards that made execs look brilliant at meetings I wasn't even invited to. Still, I told myself it was worth it, that I was building towards something. Recognition, a promotion, a seat at the table. Then came the project. My project. It started as a tiny side experiment, a customer behavior algorithm I'd been tinkering with after hours. Just raw curiosity. I called it Glacier because it could track slow-shifting trends that most platforms completely missed. I presented the prototype to my manager, Darren, who shrugged and said, "Cool stuff, Rebecca, but don't get distracted from your core KPIs." 2 weeks later, Glacier was quietly integrated into the new product roadmap. I wasn't listed as a contributor. I wasn't invited to the strategy huddles. But suddenly Darren was walking around with a smugness that didn't match his usual cluelessness, quoting things I'd said during our one-on-one meetings like they were his own ideas. I didn't say anything. Yet. Then came the meeting. A major investor was visiting, the kind that could pump millions into our next phase if they were impressed. I walked into the glass conference room with my laptop, ready to demo Glacier's real-time predictions and the numbers we'd validated in the last sprint. Darren saw me and smiled. "Hey, Rebecca, do you mind just waiting outside for a bit? We'll call you in if we need you." "Wait, what?" I blinked. "You need me to what?" He gestured casually toward the hallway, like I was some intern delivering sandwiches. "Just for now. It's better optics if the senior team leads the pitch." I glanced through the glass. The only people in that room were Darren, our CTO Marcus, and Madison, a marketing lead who once told me she didn't really get data stuff, but loved the colors on my charts. No one in that room had written a line of the model. Not one of them had tested the heat maps or solved the decay loop bug. This was my creation, and they were about to serve it up without even letting me speak. I stood frozen in the hallway for the next 43 minutes, watching through the tinted glass as my future vanished behind laminated investor decks and fake laughs. They never called me in. When the doors opened again, Darren slapped me on the back like we were war buddies. "It went great. Couldn't have done it without you, champ." "Champ?" I nodded, smiled, and said absolutely nothing. But something inside me split that day. They thought I was just another invisible worker bee who wouldn't dare challenge the hive. What they didn't know was, I'd already been building a plan B. Flashback. 2 months earlier, my best friend, Clara, had been begging me to leave Verilitech. She ran ops at a small but hungry AI startup called Prismix. "You could do way more than what they let you do there, Beck. You're not just a number cruncher, you're a damn visionary." I had laughed it off. It's stable. And besides, I'm not built for startup chaos. But still, I started coding Glacier on my personal laptop outside company hours. I kept backups, notes, logged every piece of IP I created. I even ran independent version tracking to separate what I built for Verilitech from what I created on my own. Call it paranoia, or maybe just preparation. That day in the hallway, it all clicked into place. They had Glacier, but I had Frostline, the full-scale platform I'd been quietly developing in parallel. Faster, smarter, and completely mine. All they'd done was show me their hand. Now I was ready to show mine. The resignation. 2 weeks after the meeting, I submitted my resignation via Slack at 6 a.m., just as Darren was uploading his self-congratulatory post on LinkedIn about leadership, innovation, and the power of collaboration. My message was simple, effective immediately. No hard feelings, just moving on to build something of my own. Best of luck with Glacier. You'll need it. No one replied for hours. Then the panic started. It's funny how silence becomes deafening when people realize they've underestimated the wrong person. By noon on the day I resigned, I had 5 Slack pings, 2 missed calls from Darren, and an email with a subject line. Let's discuss. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they did. Just confusion. Like they couldn't comprehend why the quiet data girl suddenly dropped the mic and walked out mid-song. I didn't respond. I'd spent years over-explaining myself to people who had no intention of listening. I was done translating brilliance into bite-sized approval snacks for insecure middle managers. Instead, I focused on Frostline. Frostline wasn't just a copy of Glacier, it was what Glacier was supposed to be. While they tried to turn my innovation into a dashboard for investor showboating, I turned it into a living, learning, adaptive ecosystem. It could predict not just trends, but emotional purchase triggers across demographics. It mapped heat signatures of attention, what customers felt, not just what they clicked. And most importantly, it worked. I cleaned up the UI, integrated a lightweight neural net, and gave it a new face, something sleek, minimal, but powerful. It was like watching the version of myself I'd always dreamed of being come to life in code. Clara took one look at it and said, "You're pitching this." End of discussion.
The pitch.
We booked a meeting with Luminate AI, a fast-scaling analytics firm looking for acquisitions, to bulk up their prediction suite. The CTO, a woman named Ja, asked hard questions, the kind that would have made Darren sweat through his collar. I answered everyone with confidence. Because this time, no one was going to tell me to wait outside. At the end of the demo, Ja leaned back and said, "You built this solo?" Every line. "What do you want for it?" I hesitated, because this was the moment. The exact moment Virelitech had stolen from me. "I don't just want to license it," I said. "I want to run it. As a division. I want Frostline to be its own brand under your umbrella. And I want hiring autonomy."
She didn't blink. Done.
"But you start Monday." I walked out of that meeting with a signed 6-figure offer and a founding CTO title. Meanwhile, at Virelitech, apparently, Glacier didn't scale. Their big investor pulled out 2 weeks after launch. Rumor had it that the predictive model stopped working under live market conditions because the copy Darren used was missing my final core logic updates. The updates I kept on my personal cloud. The ones they never asked for. Because, why talk to the woman who actually built it? Within a month, Virelitech started hemorrhaging clients. The CTO, Marcus, stepped down to pursue new opportunities. Darren went suspiciously quiet on LinkedIn. And then came the message that almost made me laugh out loud. From Darren M. Subject: "Let's catch up? Hey Rebecca, we've been reviewing some strategy shifts and would love your input. Maybe there's a way we could collaborate again in the future. Let me know if you're free for coffee sometime. No pressure, just a chat between old teammates." Smiley face. Best.
Darren.
Old teammates? I nearly snorted chai through my nose. This man told me to wait outside. Now he wanted coffee? I didn't reply. Instead, I went to work building Frostline's beta partner network. We onboard 3 major retail chains and a fintech firm by the end of the first quarter. And every pitch included a demo slide titled, "What They Missed." Then came the invitation I didn't expect, an email from TechPulse, a top-tier industry conference. They wanted Frostline to open the next-gen analytics track. I reread the email 3 times, certain it was a mistake. Keynote slot. Day 1. Not just on the schedule, headlining. I sent it to Clara, with 1 line. They wanted me invisible. Now, I'm impossible to ignore. We built the demo over 2 weeks. Sleek, live-coded, real-time predictions powered by Frostline's engine. I rehearsed for hours until I could deliver it cold. My team, yes, my team now, ran checks on every system. It had to be flawless. And then, I saw the attendee list. Virelitech. They were still listed as sponsors, which meant Darren and his cronies would be there. Front row, watching me speak. Poetic doesn't even begin to describe it. The conference. The lights dimmed. My name flashed across the screen. The same girl they told to wait outside was now walking onto a stage in front of 2,000 people with her own empire behind her. I paused before the final slide. The room was silent, waiting. And then I said, "You can't steal vision. You can't plagiarize passion. And you definitely can't bury brilliance just because you don't understand it. They tried. I built anyway. The applause was deafening. In the crowd, I locked eyes with Darren. He looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. 3 days after my keynote lit up the tech blogs, I got a letter in the mail. Well, not a letter, exactly. A cease and desist. From Veritech. My first reaction? Laughter. Loud, cackling, throw your head back kind of laughter. I actually called Clara mid-hysterics and said, "You will not believe what these clowns just did." She didn't miss a beat. Let me guess. Darren's salty, he can't steal your code again, so now he's trying to sue. Bingo. The document was as flimsy as Darren's leadership had always been. Their claim? That frost line was a derivative product of Glacier, which, according to them, was developed collaboratively under Veritech's IP umbrella. Nice try. I had timestamps, Git logs, backup drives, and documented Slack receipts showing that Glacier was originally my solo concept, long before it ever touched Veritech's servers. But more importantly, Frostline wasn't Glacier. It was bigger, better, and legally entirely separate. Their lawyer clearly hadn't done their homework, or they were hoping I'd panic and cave. Spoiler alert, I didn't. My legal team versus their ego. I forwarded the letter to my attorney, Nadia, a woman who made high-powered execs cry in depositions for fun. She barely skimmed it before chuckling. They're bluffing. Want to go on offense? Absolutely. We drafted a response that made one thing crystal clear. Any further attempts to smear or sabotage Frostline would result in a full countersuit and public disclosure of internal documents. We even included a little preview, a snippet of Slack messages from Darren's team, where one PM joked about copy-pasting Rebecca's old algo and slapping our name on it. Oops. But here's where it gets interesting. While preparing our defense, Nadia asked me to forward any documentation I had from my time at Veritech. I dug through my old cloud folders, Slack exports, private journals, and stumbled on something I had completely forgotten about. A folder titled Anonymous Tips, Project Deep Dive. It was a shared feedback channel we'd used when Glacier was in testing. Employees could submit bugs, ideas, and anonymous concerns. Most were technical, but one stood out. It said, "Watch out. Darren's presenting Rebecca's model like he built it." He even had Madison rewrite part of her pitch deck to erase attribution. I'd back up everything if I were you. There was no name, but it triggered a memory. An engineer named Sylvia, quiet, brilliant, the kind of dev who spotted flaws nobody else did. She left Veritech a month before I did, no warning, no LinkedIn update. Just vanished. I reached out. The whistleblower. Sylvia responded within hours. I've been waiting for someone to ask. What she told me made my blood run cold. Apparently, I wasn't the first. Veritech had a history of harvesting ideas from junior talent, rebranding them under senior leadership, and icing out the original creators. Sylvia had built an anomaly detection tool 6 months before Glacier, and watched it get stripped down, renamed, and buried inside a back-end optimization suite Darren later claimed was his idea. When she spoke up, she was gaslit, written up, and eventually pushed out. She sent me screenshots, emails, internal tickets with her name suddenly removed. It was Glacier all over again, just with a different victim.
Suddenly, this wasn't just about me.
This was a pattern of theft built into the company's culture. And I had the receipts, turning the tables publicly. With Sylvia's permission, I compiled everything into a timeline. Glacier's original concept, Darren's emails, the anonymous warning, Sylvia's experience, the lawsuit, and my legal rebuttal. Then I wrote a LinkedIn post.
Polished.
Professional. Ruthless. When talent is treated like a resource, innovation dies. I told my story, how I'd spent years building products in silence, only to be shut out of my own work. How I left, built something better, and watched the same people who told me to wait outside try to destroy what they couldn't control. I didn't name names. I didn't have to, but I did attach screenshots. And I tagged the conference, the investors, the founder network, all the people watching Verilitech closely. The post went viral in under 12 hours. Tech influencers reposted it. Former employees came out of the woodwork in the comments. Other women in data science shared their own stories of being erased in boardrooms and blindsided in reviews. And just like that, Verilitech was trending, but not for the reasons they wanted.
Fallout.
By the end of the week, 2 Verilitech execs had resigned. Darren set his LinkedIn profile to private. Frostline gained 11,000 new beta signups. And I was invited to speak at Women in Data 2025 as a keynote on ethics and attribution in AI innovation. You could almost hear the sound of karma snapping its fingers. I never planned to become a symbol. I just wanted to build things that mattered and be recognized for them. But when my LinkedIn post went viral, it turned me into something else entirely, a case study. A rallying cry for women in tech. A thorn in the side of every exec who ever nodded through your pitch just to repeat it in their next meeting. And then my inbox exploded. There were interviews, podcast invites, panel discussions. But one email stood out. Subject: Feature request Tech Unboxed. From Ard Michaels at techunboxed.com. Ryan Michaels, senior investigative reporter, known for exposing corporate malpractice in the tech world. The guy who took down Carversoft's silent discrimination pipeline 2 years ago.
He wanted to feature me.
We met at a coffee shop downtown Neutral Ground. He wore a wrinkled blazer and carried 2 recorders and a legal pad that looked like it had seen war. I'm not here to puff up your brand, he said. I want to understand what Verilitech really did and what they've been doing to people like you for years. I nodded. You'll need more than my story. Don't worry, he said, flipping open his notebook. You're not the only one who's come forward. And that's when I learned this wasn't just a pattern, it was a business model. The darker pattern. Over the next few days, Ryan shared parts of his investigation. Verilitech had quietly cycled through dozens of junior talent, especially women and people of color, who all had similar stories. Pitches stolen, code rewritten and rebranded, contributions erased from final decks, NDAs used as silencers when people pushed back. One woman claimed she was blacklisted after refusing to sign a retroactive NDA for a system she had built. Another said Darren offered her a raise to keep things quiet. Ryan's eyes burned with controlled fury. They don't just exploit brilliance, they erase it. I think this story's bigger than we thought. I agreed to let him use my full name and include the Frostline saga. If I was going to stand up, I wasn't doing it halfway. The buyout offer. Right around the same time, I got a message from Luminate.ai's executive board. They'd seen the press, the conference buzz, the surge in Frostline's traction, and they had an offer. $8.2 million. For full acquisition. Immediate payout. One condition. I step down and sign a non-disparagement clause. At first, I was stunned.
$8.2 million.
It was more money than I had ever imagined holding in my life. But something felt off. I read the offer again. The clause was airtight. If I signed, I couldn't speak publicly about Verilitech ever again, and Luminate would quietly absorb Frostline, shelving its brand. In other words, they didn't just want my tech. They wanted to shut me up. I closed the email and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Would this be justice? Or would it be just another bot silence? Clara called it immediately. You know what this is, right? She said. They're trying to launder Verilitech's reputation by absorbing you. Maybe it's a chance to move on. She was quiet for a second. Then, Rebecca, if you take the money and disappear, they win. Again. The blackmail attempt. That night, I got another message, but not from a boardroom. It was an unlisted number. Text only. You've made your point. But if you push this further, we'll push back. Remember that contract you signed in 2022? I blinked. I had signed dozens of NDAs, employment docs, policy agreements, but this felt like a threat. Then came the second text. A photo. Me from a security camera, late at night in the Verilitech office. Alone. Downloading code. My stomach dropped. It wasn't illegal. I had written that code. The logs backed me. But framed the wrong way, it could look bad. Very bad. I called Nadia. Her voice was like steel. "They're bluffing. That photo proves nothing. If anything, it shows how late you worked on your own IP while no one else was around." Still, it chilled me. They were scared, which meant I was hitting them where it hurt. But now they were getting desperate. Going public, all the way. The next morning, I went live with Ryan's article. Title: The Quiet Theft, How Verelitech Built an Empire on Stolen Brilliance. It was brutal. Well-researched. Verified sources. Redacted Slack messages. Contract analysis. Interviews with 5 former employees, myself included. And one line that hit like a hammer. They told her to wait outside, while they built their future on her silence. She didn't stay silent. The article dropped at 8:12 a.m. By 9:47, Verelitech's official Twitter was in damage control mode. By noon, 3 venture capital firms publicly distanced themselves. By 2 p.m., the Frostline site crashed under traffic. We were flooded with demo requests. Investors, clients, journalists, engineers wanting to join the team. Even competitors offering strategic partnerships, but without buyout clauses this time. And Darren? Oh, Darren. He finally broke his silence, in the worst way possible. An email sent to select investors trying to discredit me personally, accusing me of emotional instability, manipulation, even code theft framed as activism. Unfortunately for him, someone forwarded it. To Ryan.
To me.
And to several legal teams. The email Darren sent, accusing me of emotional manipulation, theft, and being some rogue activist, was the final nail. I stared at the screen for a long moment, every word crawling across my chest like acid. Then I stood up, printed it, and added it to the evidence binder labeled simply, Verelitech, final. Because now, I was done waiting for karma. It was time to deliver it myself. The lawsuit. Nadia wasted no time. We filed for defamation, breach of confidentiality, and retaliatory intimidation. It wasn't just about clearing my name anymore, it was about the truth. About the hundreds of workers like Sylvia who had been quietly dismantled, picked apart, then discarded. And I had receipts, screenshots, signed declarations, even a security timestamp showing Darren logged into my prototype folder after hours, 3 days before Glacier was announced. He tried to paint me as unstable.
Fine.
I painted him as calculated, dangerous, and desperate. And suddenly, the narrative shifted again. The public reaction. Tech Unboxed updated their article with new evidence. Several former employees offered to testify. Verelitech's brand partners started pulling sponsorships. One VC firm retracted a funding round publicly and stated they were reevaluating due diligence protocols moving forward. Darren, however, didn't go quiet. He went nuclear. The sabotage attempt. It started with strange bugs in our Frostline backend, glitches that seemed too targeted to be accidents. Account setups disappearing. Algorithm outputs skewed. Beta users being locked out without explanation. At first, we thought it was a tech hiccup. Then our CTO, Miles, ran a systems audit and found something disturbing, a ghost access point logged in under an old third-party credentials ID. An API key tied to an external contractor who had briefly worked on Verelitech's infrastructure. The same key had been accidentally shared with our onboarding system months ago during early Frostline development, before we'd realized how sensitive our architecture would become. Somehow, Darren, or someone working with him, had gotten access. And they weren't just trying to spy. They were trying to crash the system from the inside. The counter-move. We shut it down within hours, patched the breach, and traced the IP trail. One endpoint ping back to a consulting firm Darren had listed as advisors in a past investor update. Nadia forwarded everything to our legal counsel and began drafting an emergency injunction. But Clara had a better idea. Why not expose it publicly? I hesitated. It's risky. She shrugged. So is letting them quietly twist the story again. But you have proof now. I thought about it all night. Then I wrote a post, not a takedown, but a timeline. It outlined everything. The backdoor access. The IP trail. The evidence linking it to Darren's network. The fact that our system had survived the attack and grown stronger because of it. I ended it with one sentence. You can't sabotage what you never had the vision to build. It exploded. Again. But this time, industry leaders spoke up. Frostline wasn't just trending. It was being called the blueprint for ethical AI growth. We received offers for major licensing deals. Universities requested to study our dev practices. A government research lab even asked for a sandbox demo. Frostline had evolved from a startup to a movement. The courtroom. The day of the first hearing, Darren finally showed his face. He looked thinner, older, like the past few months had hollowed him out. But his arrogance was still intact. He walked past me without a glance, clutching a leather briefcase like it was a life raft. His legal team tried to posture, claiming I was weaponizing media, that I had violated employee loyalty, that Frostline had benefited unfairly from Verelitech's platform. But every time they made a claim, Nadia countered with cold facts. And when I took the stand, I looked Darren dead in the eyes as I read my final statement. You didn't just try to silence me. You tried to erase me. And I built something louder than you could ever imagine. The outcome. The judge ordered a preliminary injunction against Darren, barring him from any tech-facing leadership role while investigations continued. Verelitech's board was instructed to conduct an internal audit. Shareholders revolted. Investors vanished. By the time I left the courthouse, Frostline had doubled its valuation. But I didn't feel joy.
Not yet.
There was one more move left. And it would be the one no one saw coming. Coming up in the final chapter, Chapter 6. Rebecca makes a bold offer to buy what's left of Verelitech, not to save it, but to bury it properly. She confronts Darren for the last time and learns a chilling truth about why he targeted her in the first place. And Frostline's future is sealed, not just as a product, but as a legacy. 6 months after I walked out of Verelitech with nothing but my laptop and a rage-filled heart, I sat in the executive suite of Frostline's new headquarters, sipping tea out of a mug that read, "You can't erase me." It had been a whirlwind. The lawsuit was still ongoing, but public perception had shifted so far that Verelitech couldn't recover even if they tried. Frostline was now backed by 2 major innovation grants, had signed 3 government contracts, and was onboarding its 100th full-time employee. I should have felt finished. But something kept tugging at me. Something incomplete. Then an email arrived. Subject: Strategic Acquisition Opportunity. Hello, Rebecca. We understand Frostline has surpassed its Series B goals and is seeking legacy integration opportunities. Verelitech's remaining assets are now being listed in a private liquidation auction. As part of this listing, you are eligible to bid on the original Glacier source code, Verelitech's patents and technical licenses, the company brand and domain. I stared at the screen. They were selling the company that tried to destroy me, and they were offering it to me first. My first instinct? Walk away. Let it rot. Let Darren's legacy vanish in the shadows of my success. But then Clara said something that changed my mind. You don't just owe it to yourself. You owe it to everyone they stole from. Burn it down the right way. She was right. If I let someone else buy Verelitech's corpse, it could be rebranded, recycled, rewritten. But if I owned it, I could end it. On my terms. The auction. I didn't show up in person. I submitted a blind offer. Clean, quiet, precise. I didn't overbid. Just enough to win. Just enough to make a statement. And 1 week later, I got confirmation. Congratulations. Your bid has been accepted. You are now the legal owner of Verelitech's full asset portfolio. The first thing I did? I deleted the domain. www.verelitech.com gone. Every active system? Disconnected. The branding? Dismantled. Their legacy? Archived into a PDF marked Exhibit A. But I wasn't done yet. The final meeting. I scheduled one last meeting, closed door, off the record. And I invited one person only, Darren. He showed up 10 minutes late, wearing a wrinkled blazer and the same smug look he always wore when he thought he had the upper hand. Except this time, he didn't speak first. I slid a single-page document across the table. It was a release agreement. In exchange for signing it, he would forfeit any remaining stake or legal posturing over Glacier and acknowledge my sole IP ownership in writing. He glanced at it, scoffed. So this is about revenge? I met his eyes, calm and unflinching. This is about closure. He leaned back. You always wanted power. You just couldn't admit it. I tilted my head.
No, Darren. I always wanted respect.
But you couldn't afford to give it to me. So now I'll take everything else instead.
He signed. Silently. Slowly.
Then he stood, like a man with nothing left to bluff. Before he walked out, I said one more thing. You once told me to wait outside. Now I own the building.
He didn't respond. He just left.
And with that, the final thread of Verilitech unraveled. 1 year later, Frostline became one of the fastest-growing analytics platforms in North America. We redefined what ethical, human-first AI looked like. We built a mentorship pipeline for underrepresented talent. We hired Sylvia as head of engineering. Clara was now my COO. We didn't just rise from the ashes. We turned them into fuel. And as for Verilitech, nothing remains. No logo. No tagline. No whisper of the toxic culture that once told me I didn't belong. Because I didn't just take them down. I rewrote the narrative they tried to control. Sometimes the worst betrayal is being told you're not worth the room. That you're too junior. Too loud. Too emotional. Too much. But here's the truth.
They didn't silence me. They amplified me.
They didn't destroy me. They gave me a blueprint for something better. So, if someone ever tells you to wait outside while they present your work, don't wait. Build your own doors. And when you're ready, own the whole building.